The roll.
Agency members: Najarian.
Here.
Quintero.
Here.
Weaver.
Here.
Youssefin.
Here.
Chairman Green.
Here. Would you read your report, please?
The agenda for the November 27, 2007 regular meeting of the Glendale Redevelopment Agency was posted on Wednesday, November 21, 2007 on the bulletin board outside City Hall.
Thank you. And what's next, please?
Is there a motion to approve the minutes?
So moved. Second.
Okay, the minutes are approved. Next, please.
Next is oral communication. Discussion is limited to items not a part of this agenda. Each speaker is allowed 5 minutes. Agency members may question or respond to the speaker, but there will be no debate or decision. The matter may be referred to staff through the Executive Director for investigation and report.
Great, thank you. I have no speaker cards for oral communications, and I don't see anybody running up to the podium, so we'll close oral communications. Can I have the next item?
On the business agenda at 6A is Director of Development Services regarding proposal to replace the Alex Regional Theater Art Board with the Glendale Arts Alliance. At 6A1 is a motion approving Glendale Arts Alliance proposal concept and directing staff to return with proposed bylaws and management structure.
Move 6A1. Second.
All right. We go to Phil Lanzafame.
Mr. Chairman, members of the Redevelopment Agency. In 1992, the Redevelopment Agency rehabilitated the Alex Theater back to its original 1925 glory, and it has become something of a cultural and arts icon for the downtown. It is the most recognizable building that we have in our downtown. We have the Alex Regional Theater Board was tapped to operate the theater after an initial operator failed, and over the years we've seen that structure evolve from difficulty to success that we've experienced today. In planning for the future, though, and certainly with the expiration of the Redevelopment Agency in 2015, the Art Board has been looking at the structure and seeing if there's a way to continue to evolve that not only addresses those challenges that they face today, but also broadens the scope and attention on the arts citywide to complement not only those goals of the Redevelopment Agency, but the city's Arts and Culture Commission. With that, Barry McComb has a presentation to give you on this concept. I am calling it a concept, Barry will as well. We want to get some direction from the agency, see if it is a direction you want to go, what is being proposed, and then we would come back in the first part of next year with some specific tasks. There are members of staff here, the Art Board, and I believe other interested stakeholders in the Alex Theater. So without further ado, I'll invite Barry, and then the rest of the team is here if you have any questions. Barry McComb, Executive Director of the Alex Theater.
Lanzafame, as a motion second, are you asking for us to get more particular in that motion?
I don't think so, no.
Directing.
I assume that you'd want the report.
Well, it's worded as though you want direction from
directing
us.
staff.
So it's asking for us to direct staff.
I guess
The approval of the motion we'd take is directing us to prepare the necessary bylaws and management structure to come back to you for formal approval.
In other words,
so at this stage, if you're
from
comfortable, we
concept.
proceed.
That will implement
Implement
what's in here.
Right.
That's right.
Exactly.
Okay.
All right, Mr. McComb, it's all yours. Take it away. The curtain's up.
The curtain's up. All right. Thank you very much.
House lights down, though. Let's do that.
Members of the agency, city staff, and members of the public, I'm Barry McComb, Executive Director of the Alex Theater. And I would like to thank you for providing me with an opportunity this afternoon to present the Art Board's proposal for what we believe is a plan that will ensure the long-term success and financial health of the Alex Theater and will also benefit the greater Glendale arts community. I might also note that what you're seeing for the very first time is our new logo that we've designed for the Alex Theater, if it doesn't look familiar to you. The Art Board has worked very hard over the last few years to reduce expenses and increase income, and although the city's original expectation was for the Alex Theater to become self-sufficient within a few years, as you're aware, the Alex continues to require financial assistance from the City of Glendale. Unfortunately, the environment under which nonprofits operate today is drastically changing, and Glendale is no exception. According to a study by the James Irvine Foundation on critical issues facing the arts in California, Community needs are growing in both size and diversity, which is even more so in the city of Glendale. More nonprofits are competing for government and philanthropic funds. Traditional forms of funding are becoming smaller and less reliable. New for-profit businesses are now starting to compete with nonprofits to serve community needs. And donors and funders, such as government agencies and foundations, are demanding more accountability from the organizations that they fund. In response to these challenges, many nonprofits have begun to embrace a new concept known as social entrepreneurship, a strategy that I'm happy to report that the Art Board has actually embraced since 2002. However, it is unlikely that the Art Board will be able to meet the future financial needs of the Alex Theater due to the restricted nature of our board's current business model and structure, particularly when the GRA funding is eliminated in 2015. The proposal we're presenting today embraces the social entrepreneurship strategy and is predicated on the notion that we can increase the resources available for the operation of the Alex Theater while at the same time helping to build a stronger local arts community. I would like to start off by reviewing some of the restrictions of the current Art Board model and organizational structure. The current bylaws and operating lease limit the activities of the Art Board to just operating the Alex Theater. If we were now to take advantage of some income opportunities that fall outside of our stated purpose, one example would be providing box office services to a wider range of different groups within the community. The income generated from these activities would be considered unrelated business income by the IRS, and we would have to pay taxes on that income, which then makes it more expensive to try to undertake those projects. Because the Art Board is technically a city commission, board members cannot be required to participate in the fundraising process as is typical of other nonprofit organizations. In addition, the Art Board's status as a government entity has also prevented us or worked against us when applying for grants from some foundations. Although our income has significantly increased over the last 5 years, expenses such as utility bills, insurance premiums, and maintenance costs are now growing at a rate much faster than that of our revenue. It's also not feasible at this time for us to increase the rental rates of the Alex Theater to cover these costs and be able to remain competitive against similar venues within the market. The Art Board is going to need to find a way to replace the $415,000 in annual GRA funding that we currently receive. This is actually probably closer to $650,000 a year when you take into consideration the additional capital improvement projects that the agency funds for us on a yearly basis. The bottom line is that there's not another $650,000 in income to be squeezed out of the Alex Theater. So in response to these challenges, the members of the Art Board and the Alex Theater staff proposed the creation of the Glendale Arts Alliance. And this is a reflection of what our new logo would be. The Glendale Arts Alliance will be a private 501c3 nonprofit umbrella arts management organization with the primary purpose of operating the Alex Theater through a management contract and lease agreement with the Glendale Redevelopment Agency. In partnership with the Glendale Arts and Culture Commission, local arts organizations, and artists, the Arts Alliance will also develop and maintain programs throughout the greater Glendale area in performing arts, visual arts, and arts education in an effort to further nurture a strong and vibrant arts community. The Arts Alliance will also offer support services for local artists and nonprofit organizations that I'll discuss a little more in a minute. So what are the benefits of the proposed Glendale Arts Alliance structure? The first is economies of scale. Basically, the distribution of the Art Board's fixed administrative overhead expenses over the additional Arts Alliance programs and activities will immediately result in cost savings to the Alex Theater. These expenses include marketing, sales, finance, and administrative costs. Fundraising efforts will be more successful with the board's active involvement. Many foundation grants now require a personal financial commitment and full participation in fundraising activities by board members in order to qualify to receive funding from those organizations. The Arts Alliance will also have the opportunity to apply for a wider range of funding through grants since we would no longer be a government entity. A broader mission will allow the Arts Alliance to better meet the needs of the local arts community while taking advantage of additional opportunities for financial success. a broader mission, and the Arts Alliance proposed structure will also open up new opportunities for contributed and earned income, because many people look upon the Alex Theater as basically bricks and mortar that's owned by the city, and potential donors do not form the same emotional attachment to the Alex that draws them to other nonprofit entities within the community. We believe that the Arts Alliance expanded mission and greater involvement within the community will attract a larger base of supporters, including donors, volunteers, and board members who will be willing to give of their time, money, guidance, and context to the organization. By providing support services to other arts organizations and artists, we will also provide additional earned income opportunities while benefiting those organizations. The Arts Alliance will also provide an opportunity for more members of the community to become involved in the organization by serving on our executive board as a member of one of the committees, as a volunteer, or by attending one of the many Arts Alliance-sponsored events and activities that will take place throughout the community. As already mentioned, local artists and nonprofit arts organizations will benefit from management, fundraising, box office, production, marketing, and administrative support services that will be offered by the Alliance. The Alex Theater currently serves as an economic catalyst for downtown Glendale. I think the members of the merchants who are here today would tell you that when the Alex Theater is busy, they're also busy. Under this new organization, the additional programs and activities would also financially benefit business districts throughout the entire city. And, of course, a more active and vibrant local arts community will help make Glendale a more attractive location for corporations, businesses, and residents to locate to. So the big question, of course, is how are we going to fund all these activities? Well, first through ticket sales, which will be generated from performances presented by the Arts Alliance at the Alex Theater and elsewhere in the community, through box office fees generated from handling fees that are charged to customers purchasing tickets by phone or online, from rental fees generated by renting the Alex Theater and other venues in the community that the Arts Alliance may become involved with, advertising revenue from the sales of ads on the Alex Theater and Glendale Arts Alliance websites, and in what is now the Backstage at the Alex publication that will be expanded to cover the arts activities in Glendale. And also through commissions from the sales of merchandise and concessions, and from acting as a fiscal receiving agent for other arts organizations and artists that may not have nonprofit status but would still qualify to receive grant funding through a receiver. The management fees from operating the Alex Theater and other venues that we might enter into agreements with, the launch of an expanded membership program beyond the current Friends of the Alex, sponsorship sold for events presented by the Arts Alliance, and finally through our ability to apply for funding through a greater number of government and foundation grants. In our first year of operations, the Glendale Arts Alliance intends to launch the following projects. The first would be a community concert series that will be a series of free concerts staged throughout business and retail districts and will feature local performers representing the cultural diversity of the greater Glendale community. We've already spoken to several business districts who are very excited in partnering with us on this project. The new Glendale Arts Alliance website will serve as an online resource for arts and culture information, and will include resources such as a master calendar of events, gallery maps, and artist and venue listings to help connect residents and visitors to the arts community in Glendale. The Arts Alliance will also establish a new community box office service offering tickets to Glendale area performances, fundraisers, and events. Residents and visitors will be able to purchase tickets to local events online, by phone, or in person at conveniently located ticket outlets within the community. A community box office service will also provide additional marketing opportunities to the organizations that utilize it. And finally, what we're calling an Adopt-a-School program, which is designed to meet the arts education needs of students by exposing them to visual and performing arts through programs such as Artists in the Classroom and by bringing students to performances at the Alex Theater. The Art Board is proposing the following organizational chart, or structure rather, for the relationship between the Arts Alliance and the City of Glendale. As you're aware, the Alex Theater is currently owned by the Glendale Redevelopment Agency, and in 2015, title will then be transferred to the city. The Arts Alliance will be established as a separate private nonprofit entity with an executive board consisting of 11 board members and 2 city staff liaisons that would be appointed by the city manager. Reporting to the executive board then would be a 3-committee structure. Each primary committee would also have subcommittees and task forces, but broken down to an internal operations committee, which would have the primary responsibility for operating the Alex Theater, a governance committee which would oversee the policies and procedures of the board, and an external operations committee that would focus on our fundraising and sales efforts, marketing, our outreach programs, and our schedule of presentations that we would present throughout the community. And then finally, the relationship between the two organizations would be governed through a management agreement and lease, spelling out the operational requirements. It's important to note that the same reporting requirements that are currently in place now would remain in effect under the new organization. And by that I mean that the Arts Alliance will continue to present quarterly reports to the GRA and eventually to the City Council once the title of ownership transfers, in addition to submitting an annual operating budget and the year-end independent audit that we would continue to operate with. We believe that this structure provides the City with appropriate oversight over the operation of the Alex Theater while providing the Arts Alliance with the freedom to take advantage of additional opportunities that will benefit both the Alex Theater and the community. This afternoon, the Art Board is seeking a consensus of your support for the Glendale Arts Alliance concept, and we are prepared to return in March to present a more detailed presentation consisting of the following: an amended set of bylaws, the final organizational structure, which would be more detailed than what you saw earlier here, and a 5-year business plan, operations plan, and funding budget. When the Art Board returns in March, the Glendale Redevelopment Agency and the City Council would be asked to take the following actions. First, approve changing the name of the Alex Regional Theater Board to the Glendale Arts Alliance, to approve the adoption of amended bylaws effective July 1st, 2008, allowing the Glendale Arts Alliance to be restructured as a private nonprofit under the revised organizational structure, to approve the transfer of Art Board assets to the new organization with the requirement that all existing financial resources remain designated to support the operation of the Alex Theater, to approve the termination of the current Alex Theater lease between the GRA and the Art Board, and finally to authorize the GRA to enter into an 8-year management agreement and lease with the Arts Alliance for the operation of the Alex Theater. These agreements could be for a shorter term with options as well. The management agreement would pay the Glendale Arts Alliance a management fee of $415,000 per year, which is equal to the current GRA funding that the Art Board receives. And in addition, the GRA would be asked to continue with its commitment to fund the list of long-term capital improvement projects that it preliminarily approved at its April 10th, 2007 meeting. Reminding you that each of these projects are set to be completed between now and 2015, and each project will need to be brought before the agency for approval on an individual basis. The Art Board believes that the creation of the Glendale Arts Alliance will allow it to increase the financial resources available for the operation of the Alex Theater, while at the same time help to create a more active, accessible, and vibrant local arts community for Glendale. Thank you very much for your time, and I'm certainly available to answer any questions that you may have.
Thank you, Barry. Do we have questions? Councilmember Weaver.
Yeah, question, Barry. You're talking an 8-year agreement, right? Max.
This would take us through...
$415,000 a year.
Mm-hmm.
But by 8 years out, $415,000 won't be what it's worth today.
That's correct.
So do you want to index that or something so real dollars are equivalent in 8 years out?
One of the primary purposes of the Arts Alliance is to do everything that the current Art Board can to begin to minimize our reliance on a subsidy from the city.
Understood.
I think we all recognize that the chances of totally replacing that amount of money are probably not good, but with what we're asking for the Arts Alliance, that basically mirrors what our current agreement is through the Art Board, where the city is committed to maintain the 415 funding through 2015, in addition to the capital improvement projects, which will help position the theater into a competitive position.
In other words, you thought about it, but you're comfortable with the 415.
Yes, because obviously as the Art Board, or as the Arts Alliance continues to grow and expand, we'll be increasing the revenue we're generating through other sources.
Okay. Councilman Yusefian.
I was going to ask this when you came back with the bylaws, but I might as well just ask for it now. this is if everything goes okay, I have no problem with it. Let's say by some slight chance, since we are transferring all the assets to the art board, and it's a nonprofit organization, and something happens with individuals on the art board, and somehow money got mismanaged, something happens to you, got a better job, you went somewhere else, whatever. I'm thinking about the time that things don't go right and there's some issues. How does that affect the city? Because currently, we control the money, we have control of all the assets. With this proposal, the nonprofit will have control of the assets.
Actually, I believe the same control would be in place. The way that the agreement exists now is, we're actually it's kind of an interesting scenario because we're a separate corporation from the city, but we have that tie as a city commission, but technically the funding that goes to our corporation is under the control of our board. So when we get your 415, that goes under the control of the board members to ensure that it's spent under the parameters that it should. Of course, the city always has the right to come in and do an audit, and if you feel we're not spending money in the proper way, you can come back and, change what the agreement is. From the standpoint of assets, when we add assets to the theater, they become the property of the city, and that would remain the same. So if we're involved in capital improvements, those...
But that's not what I mean by assets. When you have a lease that is an 8-year lease with Alex, that is considered to be an asset.
Okay.
And let's say the art board is not doing what we want them to do, and they decide to do certain things that the community has some issues with, and if we say you can't do that, do they have a stake in this? Can they come back to us and say, we have a standing in here, and sorry, you can't tell us to do anything because we have a 8-year lease? Or do we have an option there that we can turn around and just cancel the lease?
Mr. Chair, members of the agency, the lease agreement sets forth in further detail beyond the existing bylaws that we have with the art board, the terms of which will become the proposed management agreement with the Glendale Arts Alliance for purposes of how those assets must be used, the physical assets, the physical improvements, and to the extent that there is some change or problem where those assets must reside, that pursuant to the 501(c) private nonprofit organizational structure, those have to remain with the Glendale, with the Alex Theater and those improvements. And if there is some problem, theft issues where you've got someone who's not handling those assets properly, then we have all rights under the law to pursue obtaining damages, a return of the property. All of those things are available to us as the landlord under the lease, as well as when it comes to problems either under the management agreement that will be proposed. They're similar to the bylaws. Hopefully that gets to answer
I just want to make sure
Well,
that
I think the question was broader than that. The question dealt with if, for some reason, the city felt that the direction the Alex was going, regardless of the issue of the assets and the protection of the assets, that the direction of the Alex wasn't going the direction the city thought it should be. Is there going to be a provision within that lease or the management agreement, if you will, to provide the ability for the city to either terminate it or to provide some notice that they're not pleased with the operation of the direction of the theater?
Absolutely, and that's similar to any professional services agreement or management agreement where you're setting forth a scope of services, and our expectation would be that they would be undertaking that prescribed scope of services in the way that we intend them to.
Thank you.
And let me actually just add that in our current lease operating agreement with the city, there is a similar out clause now that exists, that if we're not living up to the city's expectations or reach a point where we can no longer properly operate the Alex Theater, there is an out clause that discusses what happens with assets.
Let's go to Phil Lambsfam, had a comment, and then to Frank Quintero.
I was just going to address what I thought was initially the comment about funds. We would still anticipate having the same level of oversight. In other words, a quarterly report would be coming to you, staff would be sitting in on the finance committee, and we would be privy to the books, if you will, so that we would be able to detect if Barry were siphoning money off with the rest, or somebody else mischievous, we would be able to know that and address it. before it got away from us. And
I think it was I think my question was a little bit different because now the commissioners are appointed by the council basically. But this way, the commissioners will not be appointed by the council. Let's say there was a change of direction to a point that say, we're renting out every single day to some other, to different groups to make money, and then the community groups are unable to use the facility, or local nonprofits or people who want to use it will not be able to use it because the organization is focused in making a lot of money. And so then the organizations start coming back to us and say, okay, there's a completely a shift of direction, and this is no longer a community asset, and we want to go back. And I wanted to know if there was a way we could remedy that. That's all.
I think in any sort of an operating agreement between the Arts Alliance and the city, you can spell out that the primary, one of the primary roles is it has to remain cost, available to the community.
And thereafter, we can give notice of termination under the lease, under the management agreement, and seek another organization as appropriate to run the Alex.
Frank.
Okay, Barry, I've got a lot of confidence in your leadership, your vision. Ever since you've come on board, you've absolutely had all the answers for the Alex, so I assume this is something that you've worked on and that you feel is the way to go.
This concept actually first raised its head about 3 years ago. We didn't really act on it at that point because our primary focus was getting the Alex into a positive cash flow. We've now had positive cash flow for the last 2 years, and with the challenge of the 2015 deadline approaching us, we felt it was time to go forward. So there's been a lot of thought process both among the staff and at the board level behind the proposal that you have in front of you.
Okay, so you answered, I have a number of questions. You answered one of them. Is this a template that other cities use? I mean,
there actually are several examples. One that's probably closest to us is the Scottsdale Arts Council, which has an agreement with the city. They actually operate the city's cultural venues and play the same role of promoting and providing assistance to arts organizations within the community. At another level, and I haven't really had an opportunity to dig too deep in, but I was just informed by the director of the LA Arts Commission that Long Beach has a similar entity in place.
Okay, so starting with the different slides, the mission statement I think is great for the arts in general here in the city, but I do hope that the focus of this Arts Alliance is the Alex Theater. I mean, I would hate for it to be maybe in the future, but I would hope in the beginning that it absolutely is focused on the Alex and not to be sort of diffused.
The Alex will always be our anchor and our primary focus, and the real drive behind this concept is to ensure that we can keep the doors of the Alex open without having to come back to the city and continually request, additional funding.
Okay, then in the organizational structure, there wasn't any tie to, or maybe I missed it, or any mention of the Arts and Culture Commission. How is that going to blend in? I mean, this is a broad mission statement. How is our Arts and Culture Commission going to tie in?
We actually see ourselves working in partnership with them rather than trying to tie the two organizations together officially. I've already had an opportunity to speak to a couple of the commissioners who are excited at the direction that we're trying to go. Before we come back to you in March, we'll make a formal presentation to the commissioners at that time and ask for their endorsement of our final plan before we bring it back to the council in March. So our plans are to find different projects, and actually the Arts and Culture website is probably a perfect example of where there can be joint activities between the two of us.
Okay, and perhaps you could have one of the commission members be an ad hoc committee member, not with any voting powers or anything, but at least have that person present at your board meeting so there's some closer tie. Then the two staff members are going to come from the redevelopment agency?
The current proposal is for the city manager to determine. That would be our suggestion. It's what we currently do, whether it's somebody from the manager's office and redevelopment. But I have stayed, as my predecessor, quite close to the board, and we're the ex officio members of that board. So that would be our recommendation.
Okay, that sounds fine. I think that's a good idea. And then finally, in terms of the next step, the 5-year business plan, operations, and so forth, quite frankly, I mean, it's about reducing the subsidy. That's what I'm interested in. I'd like to have the Alex. It's never going to be a totally profit-making operation, I have a feeling, but let's do as much as we can to reduce the subsidies, and I think you've got the right ideas. I think you can pull it off, Barry.
Great, thank you very much.
Thank you.
All right. I have a couple of questions, and just so I'm clear on the issue of the management, Barry, let's say that you were to book a Merry Tuba Christmas, and the council is adamantly opposed to deep-sounding instruments, demanded nothing higher than a middle C, and nothing lower than a middle C. Could we come to you and say, we're not happy with this selection, please cancel the booking? Or is that beyond our scope as council once the Arts Alliance is formed?
Well, there's actually two sides to the question. Once we've actually booked something, there's a financial commitment on our behalf. Can the council provide us with input as far as the types of programs they'd like to see brought to the Alex? By all means. When it comes to a rental standpoint, which is primarily what most of our presentations are, we're a little limited there because as a public venue, we can't pick and choose who we're willing to let come into the venue and who we can't. There are ways to, not necessarily control, but by just the rules and policies that we have in place, the venue is obviously more attractive for some types of events than others. But just as we seek input from our board, and as we'll be seeking input from the community as to the different types of bookings that we bring to the theater, certainly we would welcome the same kind of input from the council.
Thank you. Looking under the sources of funding, I think there's an omission. Perhaps concessions should be included in there.
That's actually listed under the commissions. Currently, we receive commissions from our concessionaire. As I've mentioned at past quarterly reports, we are actually in the process now of looking to bring concessions in-house. The board has filled out the paperwork to assume the liquor license, and once that happens, then we'll be bringing that in-house and actually enjoy a much higher profit margin on that at that point.
I agree that the liquor will provide a higher profit, but would the status as a 501c3 charitable organization prevent you from assuming and operating a liquor license?
Not if we move forward with the way that we're recommending, which is that the Art Board 501c3 remains in place, and all we're doing is broadening the mission and changing the name. The liquor laws, I think it's that a nonprofit has to have a 5-year track record of having operations to receive a liquor license. Obviously, we've got 13, 14 years plus. So as long as we're not founding a totally new 501c3, there will not be an issue with the transfer of the current license.
Okay. All right. Thank you.
I want to say I left the room and the talk turned to liquor.
Just beer and wine.
Just to continue your normal service at the Alex, right?
Yes.
Barry, I have just a couple questions, too. Councilmember Quintero touched on a couple of them, but I want to broaden the question a bit. Were you talking about management fees and management of other organizations, possibly, and so on? I just want to, Barry, that you and I have had a previous conversation related to the Glendale Civic Auditorium, and you also know because of that I would probably be the loudest opponent of that up on this dais, but I want to know if that's the kind of thing that you are talking about there. Providing management, fundraising, box office production, marketing, administrative support services to the artists and nonprofit organizations.
Actually, with the services that you just mentioned, case in point would be maybe Luna Theater. would come to us and they want us to take over just their box office operation for them, or they'd like to hire us to help them with their marketing. That would be on kind of a case-by-case basis and would be based on fees. As far as the management fees, obviously the primary one would be from the Alex, and in time there might be an opportunity for us to take over a local art gallery to run as a place for local artists to exhibit their paintings. The primary purpose or intent there is not to take over the Civic Auditorium.
Okay. So that's not the primary intent, but is that just as a question, is that
Yes.
Is that one of the it's not the main intent, but is it one of the
I mean, I think if
one of the lesser intents?
I think if at some point the city came to us and said, the Civic Auditorium doesn't have a professional marketing staff, we'd like to talk to the city about assisting with marketing plans, that would be an appropriate partnership between the two of us. Are we looking to come in and take over total management of the Civic Auditorium? That's not part of what this plan is.
All right. Let me also come back to the Arts and Culture Commission. I also would like to see a larger role for them that would bring them into contact with the Alex. And to me, it is more than just a partnership of saying, we'll talk to them, or I have talked to a couple of board members. Obviously, I can't speak for any of my colleagues. I'm speaking for myself, and that is to say that I would like to see one or two of those commissioners involved in somehow in the structure that you've shown there of all of the different committee and board members, organizational structure. Because I think that is exactly where our arts and culture commissioners should have some role. Even if it is an advisory role, I think that their voices should be heard on this, not just from a totally separate track, a kind of, we'll partner with them in the sense that we'll kind of talk to them if need be, or we can say we are, but an actual role for them. And in fact, we have some arts and culture commissioners who have served on your board, or at least on the board of the Friends of the Alex anyway in the past. So.
I would just say that we certainly are not opposed to that. It would just be a matter of working with the city attorney's office to ensure that we don't create ourselves as being a city commission again. Yeah.
Right. And then lastly, I wanted to just, can you talk a little bit about in-house production, because one of the questions that I get a lot is about, we'd love to see in-house production. And I think this is a good opportunity for you to explain why that doesn't necessarily take place to the extent that people think it would or should.
Okay. Currently, when the Alex Theater first opened as a performing arts center, one of the primary purposes of the board was to produce an annual season of what are considered in-house productions. An in-house production is where the theater or the art board actually takes on the responsibility of booking and promoting an artist and all the financial responsibility associated with that, paying artist fees, marketing fees, and the like. The rule of thumb among performing arts centers across the country is those types of productions typically don't turn profits, or if they do, it's a small percentage. And that's basically what the Alex experienced from the very get-go. Some years were successful and they came close to breaking even. I think the worst year they lost $300,000 on doing presentations. We believe that in time that there is a way that we can return following the model that many other arts organizations use, which is to establish a piece of funding that helps underwrite the losses on productions as they happen, but it's an ongoing source of funding so that as you're pulling money out of it, you're bringing money back in. As a board, we've talked about possibly using a portion of the user fee, which is currently charged against each ticket at the Alex, which is $1 per ticket, to start to put that into a programming fund that once it builds up to a certain point, we'd slowly start to get back in, budgeting to lose money, knowing that we'd be taking money from that fund to offset the losses, but at the same time, there would be constant money coming back into that.
Thank you. Any other questions? Okay, let's go to the public. We have two cards. Thank you very much, Barry. And I also want to say your organization is terrific. What you do is great. you are all very dedicated, and I've had the pleasure of working with some of you in the past, and I know how hard you all work, so thank you. Pam Elia?
Good afternoon, agency.
Could you state your name for the record, please?
Pam Ellier.
Thank you.
I was born in Glendale, and I've owned a home here for the past 15 years. I'm a graduate of Art Center College of Design. Currently, I'm a new member of the Alex Regional Theater Board after serving on the Alex Film Society Board for 9 years. I've also served on the boards of the Verdugo Woodlands West Homeowners Association and Friends of the Glendale Library. My day job for the past 17 years is as co-owner of History for Hire, a rental house that provides props to the entertainment industry for the past 25 years. I'm extremely excited about the opportunities of the Glendale Art Alliance will bring to the city. This organization will provide an arts umbrella that will cover the Alex Theater and all of Glendale. It will allow Glendale to enjoy a broader base of the income for the arts by requiring board members to fulfill their primary goal of raising funds for the organization's works. The Glendale Arts Alliance will be able to apply for funds from groups that do not donate currently to city organizations. I make my living in the arts, as do my neighbors. Many of the most honored entertainment industry professionals of our time live in Glendale. For example, production designer John Myers, four-time Oscar nominee, two-time Oscar winner and Emmy winner. Set decorator Melinda Ritz, seven-time Emmy nominee and three-time Emmy winner. Art director Hugh Brown, 11-time Grammy nominee and three-time Grammy winner. And investigative news reporter and book author Chris Blatchford, 49-time Emmy nominee and 9-time Emmy winner. All of these professional artists live in Glendale and are patrons of the Alex Theater. Glendale is a professional arts community. We need a professional arts management organization. Glendale has great resources in people, talent, and venues. Many citizens have worked to maintain the arts in Glendale by volunteering, serving on committees, and donating to the arts. These selfless and generous people need to know that Glendale is moving into the future of arts management and helping the small nonprofit groups by creating the Glendale Arts Alliance. Just as the focus in the news today is on new mediums of entertainment and information, Glendale must also move with the times and create the Glendale Arts Alliance focused on serving future needs of the Alex Theater, the artists, and the community. Thank you.
Thank you. You can also add Edward McDonald to that list, multi-Emmy nominated set designer, art designer, and Emmy winner. Jeanette Sturdivant, whose husband perhaps could be added to that list as well.
Yes, he could. Thank you, members of the Glendale Redevelopment Agency and staff. My name is Jeanette Sturdivant. I, too, live in Glendale, and I've actually lived and worked in Glendale for quite a long time. I've worked in Glendale for 30 years at Glendale Community College, and I've lived here for almost 12 years. To frame my comments, I'd like you to know that I've had the opportunity to attend the Glendale Leaders Program. I've been a Parks Commissioner. I've served on the Friends of the Alex Board, and I am a new art board member. So my comments about the importance of the Glendale Arts Alliance does not come from a vacuum. I've witnessed many changes in our community, as I'm sure you all have, over the past 30 years. But other than the establishment of the Arts and Culture Commission, I've not seen significant changes to the commitment of arts in either visual or performing from the city of Glendale, something that is greatly needed for a city our size. I'm a new art board member, and the whole concept of the Glendale Arts Alliance was the thing that struck me as an exciting possibility that could finally be the answer to my vision of a cohesive arts program for the city, both visual, performing, and most important for me, the establishment of some public art that I would love to see in this community. Mr. McComb stated the mission and the benefits very simply. He said that this would preserve and operate the historic Alex Theater. It would nurture and promote the arts in Glendale, and it would improve the economic vitality and the quality of life for our community. Barry could not have said it better. Basically, the Glendale Arts Alliance is good for everyone.
Thank you. All right. We have a motion
And a second.
and a second.
Move 6A1.
It's already there.
It's been moved by
Moved and seconded.
Councilmember Yusefian, and seconded by,
Call the roll,
actually,
please.
Agency Member Weaver. Agency Members Najarian.
Yes.
Quintero.
Yes.
Weaver.
Aye.
Yusefian. Chairman Draymond.
Yes. Do we have any, and if without, I'm going to do your lines for you. We have a hand up. Go ahead. Bill, thank you.
You're asking for comments.
Well, I was actually going to ask Mr. City Clerk to go on to the next item, which would have been comments. So let's give him a chance to rest, and we'll go right to your comments.
I will take your cue from there. Mr. Chairman, members of the agency, I just wanted to take this opportunity to introduce to you two of our new staff members. Ken Hitz is our new Economic Development Manager. He's got more than 20 years of experience with economic development. He comes to us from the Los Angeles County Economic Development Corporation, and you may know him from the Economic Alliance of the San Fernando Valley. He's familiar with Glendale. He's done a lot of work with our staff down at the Verdugo Job Center, working with small business, predominantly in the manufacturing corridor throughout San Fernando Road. He's worked for Genesis LA, the business teams of Mayors Reardon and Bradley. He's worked with California Trade and Commerce and the Oakland County Economic Development Group. He is a graduate of West Michigan University. He has an MBA in e-business and a certificate in real estate finance and development from the University of Southern California. Not to be outdone in schools, we also would like to introduce Alan Castillo as a new project manager. He's a little bit earlier in his career, 6 years of redevelopment experience. He comes to us from the city of El Monte, where he's grown from a redevelopment intern to a project manager, and now comes to us. He's had a broad experience in El Monte, working on a transit village project, which is a 65-acre mixed-use project. He's done affordable housing. He has worked to manage the adoption of a redevelopment project area. So, in a relatively short career, brings a lot of experience to us. He also is a graduate of the University of Southern California. He holds a Bachelor of Science in Urban Planning and Development. So I'd like for you to welcome them. You will see them. They'll be working on projects. We are excited to have them. We've thrown them into projects, so they should be back to you shortly on some of the things we're already working on.
All right. Thank you, Mr. Lansman. Please, Councilmember Weaver. That is the fact that we picked up two
Trojans.
Yes, two Trojan.
Good move, good move.
Any other staff or agency member
Just
comments?
comment, this is to pay my respects to UCLA, because I won't be wearing them next week. Cardinal and gold next week. Memoriam, yes.
We have a motion to adjourn?
So moved.
Second.
We are adjourned.